Education Appropriations. I appreciate all my committee being here this afternoon, and just wanted to try to get started. We're looking, I think everybody's got the tracking sheet up here for the amended budget. We actually have very few changes in our amended budget, and so we can walk through that a little bit if you'd like to, and then we've got DOE invited to give a little presentation today and talk about their budget or anything that's amended we want to talk to. So be welcome any questions from any of my committee, and then we'll open it up for anybody else that wants to come and make a comment from the audience today too as well. Our committee, I think, would welcome any, but primarily we're going to talk about the amended budget today to try to get that taken care of, and then in the weeks ahead we'll go with the 19 budget. So on page 1, early carriage care and learning, there in 22.1, you can just go down these list, and it's just really very little changes, and we can talk about things after Department of Education is talked about. Sarah, is that what we want to get on into what they do, or
yes, that would work.
Okay, so why don't we start off and ask Department of Education maybe to come, and Ted, give us a little update on what's going on over at your area. Let's see.
Members of the committee, my name is Ted Beck. I'm the Chief Financial Officer for the Georgia Department of Education. We appreciate you all's flexibility with the weather and the scheduling. I can tell you, as the father of 2 young children, they were eminently grateful to have a chance to go sledding on last Thursday, so that was much appreciated. As you mentioned, our amended FY18 budget is fairly quiet. There's only 2 real changes that you'll find in the budget, and one of those is on page 2 of your tracking sheet. This is item 24.3.3. This is a recommendation for $15 million in cash in lieu of bonds for school buses. This is a budgetary maneuver that we've used in the past as it relates to the CTAE lab equipment. All the state is saying here is that rather than borrow and bond the funding for buses, they would just use cash that's available in the amended Appropriations Act. We would encumber that and run the bus program the same way in terms of doling it out back to the districts. The next change, this is section 24.17 inside Equality of Basic Education. So this is the midterm adjustment. As you know, every year we attempt to write a budget that projects the growth that the state will see. For any district that grows beyond that, once we have full numbers for the year in terms of enrollment and FTE, we catch those districts that grew more than that projected growth up. And so that's what you see here. And so it was a fairly slow growth year. We've talked about that being the result of a decline in the number of births that we saw for a period of about 5 years, starting with the recession. That particular curve is back up, and so in subsequent years we expect to start seeing larger percentile growth year over year than we've seen for the past 3 years now. But the largest portion of the midterm adjustment is that $86.5 million. Item 2 in that program is specific to enrollment growth that occurred in the state authorized charter schools. So that pool of schools has grown, I think, by 9 schools in that year. And so this is the remaining amount for the students that enrolled in those schools and those programs. The charter system grant is, again, a formula-driven calculation. So this is saying for any school system, traditional school system that's classified itself as charter, they receive a per student allotment or appropriation there. And so that's for any of the charter system districts that saw growth that wasn't originally appropriated in the FY18 Appropriations Act. That's the remaining adjustment there. And finally, there's a proposed reduction to the special needs scholarship. This program fluctuates throughout the year. We in terms of accounting, it kind of operates on a different cycle than the Appropriations Act. And so typically in the amended year, you see a reduction, whereas in the big budget, you'll see an increase. But nothing has really changed in terms of the program, either in terms of its enrollment or the resources it requires. It's hovered at around 4,400, 4,600 students for the last couple of years. And so it has quarterly entry and exit points, and so that number changes a little bit. But the total program budget there is around I want to say $26 million, but that is just adjusting what will actually pay out in the FY18 cycle. So that is it as far as the amended governor's recommendations. Happy to talk through any questions you might have about that or anything else in regards to the budget or the department generally.
Are there any questions from my committee? I've got one. Terry, could you go into some more detail about school bus funding? How systems earn money on a typical, this is cash, as you said, and not bonds,
Sure.
which is a little bit different. And I'm glad, very glad the governor saw fit to put this in there. I think it's very needed. We've got a real aging school bus fleet statewide. I think some data out there on that, and I'm concerned about it. So how will this $15 million be allocated, or how do schools otherwise earn money how do they fund replacing buses?
Sure. So we allocate these funds, whether they be bond or cash, but in terms of that amount of money, it's fairly similar to what we do on the capital project program, and that systems earn it based on a perceived need. So we look at, the size of the district is probably your largest driver. That's assuming you've got more students to transport. It's going to require more buses to do that. We actually look at routes, and so we try to incentivize good route planning so that we all agree as a state that the system has developed a good strategic way of getting students to and from school in the most efficient way. If that's one point of the curve, safety is the other, so we obviously aren't looking for systems to overcrowd buses, so we look for appropriateness, but efficient operations. We also look and rank the type of terrain in the district, as a matter of fact, and we score it. If it's flat and everything's paved, we assume that there's a little bit less wear and tear on your buses. If it's hilly and you've got a lot of dirt roads, we assume that you're going to run through yours a little bit faster than another district would, and so that adds to your calculated need. The net result of all of that is that we go through and a district can earn a whole bus at a time. And so inevitably the formula will spit out a number that says a lot of decimals after that, buses. And so we cap it and say that you've earned 2 buses. And so as funding becomes available on a need-based ranking, we allocate out. So everybody gets 1 bus, and then we go through it and we give everybody another bus. And so that everybody gets as many buses as they're needed, otherwise would entitle them to. In this case, and we fund that at, I forget the exact number, but it's right around $77,000 a bus.
Mm-hmm.
And so every time you earn a bus, you're getting a grant for $77,000. Now, the truth of it is when the district buys a bus and outfits it with all the options that you would normally put on a bus, air conditioning, ancillary communication systems, anything else that doesn't come with just that standard Bluebird that's coming out of Albany, it's probably closer to $90,000, $95,000, but what you get from the state is $77,000. So that's assumed to buy you a basic Class C 84-passenger yellow bus.
So this extra money would supplement what you already have for transportation? Is that how that would work? So how much on a year without this 15 do you have available for school systems?
We don't. There
Okay.
isn't. This is unique to the buses. There is a transportation operating budget that's tucked into QBE.
Okay.
127 million, does that sound right? And it's been at or around that number for years now. And so what that's funding are the drug test for your drivers, the driver safety program, portions of the driver's salary, and the ancillary benefits attached to that. The old joke that I heard when I started this job was that the state is in the business of buying the steering wheel for the bus, and the rest is up to the district, and that's probably true in terms
Okay,
of.
so it's a district-driven money formula when they replace buses for the
yeah.
most part.
Yes, if they need buses beyond what the state is funding, it's going to have to be a district-level decision and district-level resources that come
Okay.
into play.
Okay.
So our original request, just to give some context, was for $46 million in bonds. We would certainly agree that the state's fleet continues to age.
Yeah.
We use a 10-year estimate on that Class C bus to say that that's probably close to average lifespan. It's not to say that you can't get more than 10 years out of that bus. You certainly can. You can rehabilitate it. Depends on how you maintain it. But that is just the standard useful life that we've used. And if that's the metric, we are multiple thousand behind that in terms of buses that are beyond that lifespan that are on the road today. So the need is being met, but it's being met with people scraping by and making sure the buses that they've got are, again, safe and operable, but they're certainly not as new as they otherwise would be using that refresh rate.
Okay. Chairman Maxwell, hold on. Which number are you?
25.
All right, you got it. Yeah. Nope.
Nope.
Okay.
All right, try now. Whatever. Mr. Beck, two questions, I guess. Are we still reimbursing that, you gotta be 2.5 miles away, we're only reimbursing for buses or giving transportation dollars if they're more than 2.5 miles away from the school?
I think it's 1.5, but yes.
1.5,
sir.
I couldn't
yeah,
remember.
we,
It's been
we
a long
won't
time
count
since-
that student as part of your transportation
Right, and I
function.
know
if
rural
they're within-
counties, in our county with no sidewalks, we've always picked them up. If they were basically next door, we'd have to pick them up, and that's been a bone of contention for years with the school systems about not getting the reimbursement for those that were less than a mile and a half. I couldn't remember.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And then I think several years back, we did pass something about refurbishing buses, allowing them to get some of the capital outlay or build up their capital if they refurbish buses. Was that correct? It's been quite a few years back. Seemed like we did that. I'm not sure if many systems are doing that.
I'm not sure I'm familiar with that particular solution, but I say that. I'm sure there's parts of refurbishing a bus that you could bond. Generally, we can't use capital funds for what we would call operating expenses, so
Right.
regular wear and tear. So I don't think you could bond the brake job.
No, it wasn't that. I was thinking if you took one down and just completely, not talking about regular maintenance. I'm talking about you take a bus out, you go through it completely, strip it, do whatever you got to do. It was cheaper to completely go through a refurbishing plant. They had places that would take a bus and refurbish it completely and bring it out like a new one. And I thought we'd give them some kind of capital credit back 6 or 7 years ago on that.
I'll have to check.
I
and
can't
see
remember now.
if that's an allowable expenditure under bond funds.
But
Or
This
not.
is not very many buses. I know our system, I think has about 300 buses, I believe, that we're running. And if you're getting, 2.1 bus or 1.5 bus or something, this is not a big bite at the apple when we're trying to furnish all the buses in the state.
Yes, sir.
But we did that years ago on the board. We got smart one year and did a bond. Had to buy 15 buses, and we bonded them out, and we thought, well, that was probably the stupidest thing we could have done. We're going to pay for them over 10 years instead of, just biting the bullet and paying cash up front for what we had to have. So, anyway, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Okay. Chairman Coleman.
What would you say is the overall average for the state, the percentage of operating costs, buses, et cetera, that we're paying now? I'm hearing some ridiculous numbers. Is it less than 10% average throughout the state, or is it 50? What would you say is what we're providing for them now?
I've heard that 10% number as well. I'd feel more comfortable if I had a chance to go back and actually run it and see if we could compare that $127 million to that general category of expense called transportation. So let us run it, and we can send
Because I know, like in Gwinnett, we're like Representative Max was saying, we 200,000 students, and we don't have that many riding, but we won't let them walk anywhere. I mean, it's so dangerous to walk in that county.
Yes, sir.
So, every child, if they live next to the school, we bring them.
We can run against, we've just gotten in and reconciled last academic year's full expenses, and so we have pretty new numbers to look at, and so we can get you a very specific percentage.
That's still a big bone of contention you're finding with transportation.
Absolutely.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Any other members on the committee got any other questions for Mr. Beck on DOE's budget? If not, thank you, Ted.
Thank you guys very
Appreciate you
much.
being here.
Yes, sir.
Appreciate. At this time, I think we'll open it up. If anybody else is in the audience has got any concerns or anything you want to bring this committee attention to, be happy to entertain anybody else who would love to come to the mic. And just trying to get that. Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate it. If you could introduce yourself to the committee and.
Thank you very much. My name is Dean Leeper. I am Executive Director of the Kendesi Schools, and that is a network of 2 charter schools and 1 turnaround school.
And my name is Gail Burnett. I'm the Executive Director of the Office of Innovation, which is responsible for the charter and partner schools in the Atlanta Public Schools.
Well, thank y'all for being here. You want
Thank
to
you.
inform this committee of y'all's little issue?
I would love to do that. Kendesi Schools, we serve 1,250 students. This year we grew by 50% because we added a turnaround school. Pretty challenging to try your hand at turnaround. And so it's been pretty difficult that in the midst of that, there was an error in CPI reporting. Long story short, it impacts our bottom line between state dollars and local dollars by $2.3 million, which is a matter of life or death for our small growing network. It happened because there was a change in software management of HR between an old system and a new system that was confusing, and the reporting that we did to Atlanta Public Schools didn't get to the state in the same way that we reported it. And so this the net of it is that we are paying out our health benefits, but we're not being reimbursed for the health benefits for our teachers, to the tune of 2.3. Again, about 1 million of that is state, and 1.3 is local funding.
So when did y'all find out about this problem and become apparent, and what's been the consequences?
So it became apparent to us that the allocation for the school was significantly lower when we first saw the sheets published at the end of May. At that point, we contacted Kendesi and said we need to dig into this, figure out what's going on. And I would say it was probably the end of June, early July when we actually spoke with some folks over in the DOE office that actually gave us their calculation template. And we really uncovered that the issue was the health insurance.
Okay. Now your teachers, employees or employees of APS, right?
No.
No, they're not. They're employees of the Kendesi Schools,
Okay.
but it's funded through public dollars in the same way.
So your reimbursement has been cut.
Yes.
Has their benefits been cut?
No.
Now, tell me how you managed that.
Well, in the course of our 8 years, we had saved up about 1.8 million.
Yeah.
We are every month getting lower and lower, and we are in a cash flow crunch right now. And actually, Atlanta Public Schools has helped us with some cash, but it's really defined our whole staff's year because we spent a lot of our time worrying about this problem. Because when you see your sort of cash in the bank going lower with every month, and not thinking it's going to be fixed by the governor's office, and then it didn't for some reason. It's just been a drain on our resources when we'd rather be talking about the turnaround that we're taking on.
And I would just like to add that one of the reasons why Dean's set of schools, Condesi, were selected as a turnaround partner for APS was because of the excellent work they do. They have one of the highest student growth rates in our district, and I suspect in the state.
Yeah, brag on them a little bit more. You
I-
were telling me the other day what they'd be interested in restaurant committee.
They
and a little bit.
have, they started out with one school with a very innovative model, so they actually have a student-teacher ratio of 8 students to 1 teacher. So they've been very, very creative with the way in which they run school. In addition to that, when we had a charter school that was very low performing and knew we had to close it, we reached out to them and said, would you be willing to take this school on? The students really are not performing well, but we believe that you and your program could do something positive for them. And they stepped right up and took that school on. And then we came back to them last year and said, would you be interested in a partnership where you're actually taking on one of our turnaround schools, a very low performing school in our Carver cluster? And again, they stepped up and said yes. So from our perspective as a district, this was a very unfortunate error, and we're really hopeful that they can be made whole because they do excellent work.
So they're holding the bag for their error. I mean, they're taking the consequences for their error. Y'all have not been able to step up. Department of Education did not fix the problem. And I'm gonna ask Ted a little bit why it went around y'all and coming straight to this committee. I'm just trying to understand that.
So I will just say on the behalf of APS, they are right now floating us. We're a secure place, whereas we were not before we raised alarm bells. We thought it'd be fixed by now, but we would much rather fix this in following the law as it's meant to be followed, rather than sort of like a outside of the normal practices arrangement.
Okay.
I would say as a district, that's one thing that we try to stick to is making sure that we fund all of our schools equitably by law. And so, as Dean mentioned, we're hoping that this gets corrected so that we can continue to do that in the appropriate way.
Okay. Chairman Cole.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, when I met with you, and that was one of the questions I had, and one of the things I couldn't understand is because if you've earned them, if you've grown, and the students are there, and the numbers are, and that was a question I, asked you to ask the state, wherever your money comes from, why isn't it, I mean, it's there, the students are there, whether it's your school or somewhere else in Atlanta, is that not correct? The state may want to answer, I mean, I have a hard time understanding where the money is.
So the money just has not been allocated to APS to flow through to Condesi.
From where?
It would be through the QBE. The QBE
The
is
state,
where
no,
the,
state
yes,
has not
yes,
given it to Atlanta?
yes.
Do you care, Mr. Chairman, could Mr. Beck maybe?
I would like for Mr. Beck to come to the thing and ask where
what
I agree, Mr. Chairman. I've been scratching my head about where that.
Where's the money?
Yeah, it's just an error.
As much as I wish I had a closet full of money to dole out for mistakes like these. So to give you a little idea of the mechanics of this process, I think may kind of clarify your question. Districts attest to the state every year in a census of their teachers, right? I have this many teachers, this is what they teach, this is how long they've been with the state, this is their educational background, and this is whether or not that teacher participates either in the state health benefit program or a comparable health insurance program that we offer as a independent school or a school district. That is the record, the source of record that drives several different components of the QB formula, the T&E piece, the training and experience, and the health insurance appropriation. So this is back in October when we collect this. This would be October of 2016. This is feeding the FY 2018 QBE appropriation. So the data comes to us when it's submitted. A superintendent is being asked to sign off on it, as they are with most of the data they submit to the state, attesting that it's accurate to the best of their knowledge, that it contains no misrepresentation, obviously, but that they are responsible for getting it to the state in a condition that we can use to calculate as a group. It's not just DOE making these calculations, obviously, the components of the QBE formula. We employ general quality control measures, and so we look for large swings at a district by district level to see, because this isn't the first time where unintentionally a district or a component of a district has forgotten to click off on that health insurance piece, usually is where the error occurs. So if I see in a small district you went from having 150 teachers last year that received the state health benefit plan reimbursement to 0, I know something happened, and I can grab it pretty quick and shove it back to you and say, take a look at this and let me know if there's an error, but that window's really tight to make those kinds of corrections during the data collection process. And so in this case, since we're looking at it on a district by district basis, Kendesi is lumped into Atlanta Public Schools. That's what I see. I don't have metrics or a quick way for us to go through and analyze at a school by school level whether there's been a substantive swing. And so inside of APS's numbers, the 100 teachers or so we're talking about didn't cause a big enough jump because they had enough new hires to kind of offset that. So it looked like the Atlanta Public Schools health insurance reimbursement number was fairly similar to the year before. So nobody noticed it until the Appropriation Act had been written. So the question as to where is the money's not there. There is no funding in the FY18 QBE program as it was described by the FY18 Appropriations Act for us to go and just make it right. I don't get to control that. When the legislature appropriates funding to the department, it appropriates it with a set of instructions essentially and says each district is going to get this much money for these specific purposes. And those are the sheets that I have to live off of. I can't change that allocation. I can only appropriate, or in this case, allocate the money that was appropriated to the department to these districts. So there is no other $1 million that hasn't otherwise been claimed. It's just the QBE program in FY18 is essentially $1 million short. And that's where we stand today.
Okay. Any questions from the rest of my committee, from Mr. Beck? Any other questions for our guest at the table? Chairman Maxwell.
My friend won't ask it. I mean, we've had this situation in the past with other school systems where there's been some mistakes made, and we've somehow come up with an adjustment to go in there and make a correction. So I don't know where we need to look at that, but somewhere in this budget, if there's something that needs to be corrected, I think we've done that in the past. My question is, I mean, I applaud what you guys are doing and your great work with the students, but good gracious alive, an 8-to-1 student-teacher ratio. I mean, I could probably teach some kids with that ratio. I could probably take 8 students and teach them myself. I mean, that's, I just got issues how we're even funding schools on an 8-to-1 ratio there myself. I mean, I'll just be honest with you. When we've got 25 or 30 kids in some of the other classes that we're trying to work, that's commendable that you're able to do it, but good gracious alive. Like I said, I think I could teach 8 kids something. I don't know.
And that's why we do it. That's why we do it. I'll try to answer that question if that's all right with you. We do it on the same QBE formula that everybody else does. We don't get more money per student. We just spend the money differently because the charter flexibility allows us to prioritize. We don't have certain things that other schools do have, and we spend our money on teachers. And it's basically, I'd have to kind of look at our budget with you together, and I'd be happy to do that, to just show you how it is in fact possible, again, when you have the charter flexibility that allows you to waive certain expenses.
Good question, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Am I on?
Chairman Nix,
Yeah. You got me?
what number are you?
18?
I got you. Nope, there you go.
Try me again. Okay. Am I on?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. To Chairman Maxwell's point, I know several years ago we had a situation with Troup County where there was $3.4 million that got messed up because of the KIA thing with what they call the pilot program, payment in lieu of taxes. and we were able to come back and essentially make them whole. It was an error that they didn't make. It was something similar to this, where it just kind of, a number of factors came together to make it get messed up. But my question was this: what is the exact number you need here? You've mentioned 2.3 and 1.3 and whatever. What is the exact number you need to make you whole on this?
Well, the exact number would probably best come out of the DOE. They have the formula. I know that it is from the state is just shy of $1 million, and I think it's like a 970. And so actually, I keep saying 2.3, but my best estimate is that it's 2.2 something. Again, the DOE and Mr. Beck's office, they can figure out the exact figure. And they have asked me recently for what the data is, and I know that somebody within that office could say what that is.
Another follow-up. I don't understand the 900 versus the 2.3 million. What do you need from the state? What do you need from this appropriations budget?
The 900 figure. So the way that our funding is calculated is based on, first of all, QBE spitting out a number based on a very complicated formula that you're very well aware of. But then that goes into a much simpler formula, which is they look at that, how much proportionately we are owed from the local taxes. Okay. And in Atlanta, local taxes ends up being more than the state dollars. And so that's why what we're asking really is, if this error is corrected, it will affect the state by about just shy of $1 million, but it will impact us by 2.3 million.
That's what I was trying to get to, Mr. Chairman. There's a lot of difference between 2.3 and 900. So
great question.
That's what I was trying to get down to. Thank you.
Chairman Coble.
That was what I was going to push, because when we met earlier, as we said, probably the largest local supplement in the state is Atlanta. They 14, I think, thousand per child versus some 7 or 8, basically state money. So that was the question that Rent did ask, because when we talked, you said you needed the 2, but if we give you that, then is Atlanta saying they're going to come through with the other?
Yes.
Have they promised you?
Yes.
You know you're going to get that, so that okay. So that makes
It's actually they'd be legally bound to.
If I may ask one other question.
Yes, absolutely.
Because we had this question, and I had invited them to help us out a little bit. But I'm very impressed with the 8, as Chairman Howard said. Do y'all have to take the special needs children?
We do.
And
Yes.
do you do the mainstreaming and all of the other? And so what are you cutting? I'm really having a hard time as a former principal. Where are you finding to be able to give them the 8 to 1? Is that every class 8 to 1?
It's
or some
actually
classes 40?
No, it's every class. And our range is actually 6 to 8 students in a class, so they're not all 8. Probably the easiest thing to tell you that we don't have are some positions, like we don't have a librarian, we don't have a curriculum specialist, and our assistant principals and principals don't make the kind of dollars that they would if they were in Atlanta Public Schools. We don't spend as much on things like extracurriculars and specials, so we do have to cut some things that are really valuable, but we think that the class size is really valuable.
Thank you. Ms. Chandler.
Is your school K through 12?
We're K through 8. Our 2 charters are K-8, and the turnaround work that we're doing is in an elementary school, just a K-5.
Okay. Do you have school counselors, a nurse?
We have a school social worker. We don't have a full-time nurse. We have one that circulates between our 3 schools. We do some partnering with external organizations to get more counseling for our students.
Thank you.
Well, thank y'all very much. Is there any other questions at this time? I think if it's all right, the committee, we just take it under consideration this time, not make a decision here today. And we'll talk about it and certainly get back with you as we get further into our appropriations discussions.
Thank you. We
Thank
appreciate
y'all
the
for being
time.
here
Thanks
very
for your
much.
time.
Okay, is there anybody else in the, audience who would, like to address the committee or, with anything? Anybody else on the committee got any other concerns or questions of anybody? If not, I'd, entertain a motion to adjourn. So moved. Motion passes. Thank y'all very much.